For a long time, mothers have been seen as the most important person in the raising and rearing of children. Women have been fighting for equality for years in the workplace and in the home, but it is the fathers who have been battling on the front line for the equality within the province of parenting. The perspective on parenting stems from traditional expectations of the roles of men and women, along with the maternal connection mothers make during the process of childbirth. Many single fathers feel they are unable to gain support and guidance due to a lack of recognition for themselves in a society where single mothers are offered unending help and support. However, a small group of dads from Nottingham fought for the voice of fathers everywhere, and during the 90s founded an organisation which became the charity Men United Fathers Network. One of these founders was Michael Earl Taylor.
I suppose I became unexpectedly a single father after my relationship broke down, and I ended up having to take responsibility for the children. Took a long time, I suppose, to accept that, you know, to understand it. Anyway, that's what happened. I became a single father, and I was looking around for support. Or as a dad, you know, what would you do with your kids? How do you go about it, etc. I went to see social services within the first couple of days that I had the kids, and I asked to see somebody about it. What they did was left me in an office for about 2 hours, and nobody came out to see me. So obviously I became very frustrated, so me and the boys left. I think really, following my other experiences, I got away really there.
Not from social services?
Yeah, from social services. From my experience since that time, you know, I've been very lucky that they didn't probably get involved in my life. Anyway.
One person who has been fighting in the corner of single fathers and in their struggle to raise their children and engage with the services, interestingly, is a woman.
Men United Fathers Network was a small sort of self-help group in Nottingham, started for single fathers. My involvement with Men United, it started, I was working in a family centre at the time, and how I actually got started with fathers was a bit by accident, because I was managing a family centre and the families came to the centre twice a week. They were there for the whole day. Children were in the nursery and we did activities with the women. And then some of the dads came to collect their partners and the children, you know, at the end of the day. And when I first got the job, a couple of dads were in the hallway and I said, oh, go, we're not ready yet, go into the nursery and play with the kids while we're ready. And one dad said to me, I can't go in. I said, what do you mean you can't go in? And he said, I'm not allowed. I said, what do you mean you're not allowed? And apparently the last manager before me hadn't allowed the dads to go anywhere near the children in the nursery.
I found Men United, which was Men United Single Fathers Network, which was just for single fathers. I was looking for a bit of support to see what I had to do when I've got the children. There was an organisation called Men United Single Fathers Network, which was just for single fathers, which was on Garden Road in a small community centre. And there was 2 lads meeting there, so I started to meet with those every week. And then that's how we became involved with Men United, and then later on that became Men United Fathers Network for all fathers.
If there's any discussion in the media or anything about single parents, I think the vast majority of people may translate that in their mind as single mother. Now, 11% of all single parents are single fathers. That's still a minority, but it's a significant percentage to actually take note for. But when we're supporting families, you're right, if it's female workers, they are going to maybe support the children and the mother. Now, there's a lot of research, recent research has actually proved that if fathers are involved in their children's lives, it improves those children's life chances. So they do better at school, they're better at social relationships. Now, we're not talking here about fathers living with their children, because we know realistically families split, and that's okay, that happens, and then we get new families together. But what the research shows, that if a father is maybe a non-resident father and he has regular contact with his child once a week, even by phone, those child's chances will improve.
Men United eventually became a registered charity. I think it was in 2001. We used to meet regularly on Wednesday afternoons. We used to have drop-ins. We used to cook food for fathers and the children. You could say we became a community, because over the 10 years, the fathers got to know each other, their children got to know each other and grew together. And you know, some of those families are good friends still today. Yeah, we've had over 100 fathers, and you could probably double that with the children. As members, we've sorted loads of fathers out, or supported fathers in all sorts of other ways that wasn't actually members of the organisation. I suppose Men United came to an end in a sense because it had probably run its course. Men United was all volunteers, there was never no paid workers there, although for a little while we had administrator workers. There's been no, you know, it was always the fathers who was the volunteers, so it was run by the fathers themselves.
So we have to make sure, if we are going to support families, we do try and include the non-resident father. But that also can be very difficult for workers, because sadly in these times, and with political changes and lack of funding, everyone's strapped for cash and everyone has limited time. So a lot of workers aren't going to go that extra mile of actually finding out where the non-resident father lives and actually make contact with him.
Children are still the key factor. They should not be forgotten amongst the battle for equality. It is they that can suffer the most. As a society, it has been more customary to believe that fathers are more career-orientated. But how has having a single father affected the children and all of those with an obligation to protect them?
My dad pretty much became a single father when Mum was killed when I was 6, so as you can tell it was quite a young age. Being raised by a single father, well, for my opinion, it was alright. It was a bit hard because, you know, you couldn't really have that mother sort of love, I guess. There's always, I don't know, a bit. It was good, I'd say, definitely good.
Growing up with a single father was not much different than growing up with both my mum and my dad, I don't think. I mean, me and my dad are better friends now. I spent most time with my mum when growing up because my parents split because my dad was an alcoholic, so obviously up until the age of about 14 I wasn't allowed to go and spend weekends with him or spend a lot of time with him. I mean, he used to take me out like in the day and things, but I wasn't allowed to go and spend time till I was about 14.
I think with the sort of families I've worked with over the years, there are families that have complex needs, and the families that maybe have been struggling, and there's maybe unemployment, maybe poverty, and maybe drink and drugs have come into it. Quite a lot of times maybe a man is perceived to be more aggressive than the woman. That may be true sometimes, it may not be true. Quite often the women can be aggressive. We all know that men and women are very different beings. You know, there's sort of a masculine perspective and there's feminine perspective, and men and women actually communicate in very different ways. And when you're parents, if you're a mother or a father, it doesn't mean a father may do things in a very different way with his children. And women may look at that and think, oh, I don't like the way he's doing it, and he's communicating in a different way. It's not right or wrong or good and bad, it's different. And I think a lot of women and female workers find that hard to actually understand. So a father may, I mean, one of the examples I've given sometimes is when you've got a mum with a toddler in a pushchair and it's walking along. You may get the toddler in the pushchair, the mum's got two hands on the pushchair and sort of walking it in a straight line. Kid's fine, no problem. And you may get a man in the street, you know, his father with a pushchair, and he may be holding it with one hand and he's like going like this with it, and the kid's having a great time. Now you may see women looking at that father saying, what's he doing with that pushchair? You know, the kid's going to fall out and this sort of thing. But actually the child's fine. It's a very different way of doing things with children.
When my parents split, I can't really remember it that well. I mean, I was only 10, and for most of the time, my auntie just lived down the road, so I spent about 2 months living there while they were actually breaking up. And then one day my mum would come and see me, the next day my dad would come and see me, and we'd go and walk the dog and do normal things. It didn't really affect me that much at all because I was taken out of it and lived with my auntie.
The guidance I mainly spent with my uncle and my gran, really. 'Cause whenever my dad was away at work, I always went down there. But I was only for about 3 days a week, so pretty much stayed mainly with my dad. The relationship with my uncle and my gran was close because, you know, it's like my mum's mum and brother, really. So I'd say they were more close in a way to protecting me than my dad. And I'd say my gran was more looking out for anything I wanted to do. She was like, are you sure? And my uncle, I don't know, I can't really think.
Not all single fathers begin their own charity. So what is life like for an ordinary father who has not had access to extensive help and support?
Unfortunately, I became a single father in the typical cliched way. You know, it happens all the time. People get together for the wrong reasons. They end up with children. They try, but they always eventually end up splitting up. It's a very common syndrome, if you like. Nothing nasty. Seriously, I think one of the biggest issues being a single father is things like going to school where everybody else is a woman. You know, you stand out like a sore thumb. You've always got this label then as he has no wife. There's a lot of that going on. I think that was one of the biggest things. I think communication between April and myself and April and her mother, although April's mum and myself don't get on, we don't really see each other or talk to each other, April has no problem in telling me about things on that side of life, and I'm pretty sure that she doesn't hesitate to tell her mum about things that are happening here. We like to think that she's got one home in 2 different houses, and that's how we treat it. I didn't really have to ask for any help from organisations like the social services. Nowadays, things are already in place for when you become a single parent. But things like dealing with councils direct, now you have to go in and say, I'm a full-time parent, I have part-time work, I need help with my rent. I'm not sure what it'd be like with people with mortgages. I suppose that's even worse. But you do have to ask for something, and it's not easy getting through it. You have to provide them with every single financial detail possible. You know, they really look into your life as though you maybe you're hiding money. I don't know. They tend to check up on me. I don't know if it's because I'm a single parent, because I'm a single father, or generally the area, I don't know, but they tend to check up on my rent. my wages. And just recently, which has happened for the second time, I've now got to reapply for council tax benefit and housing benefit. Without those things though, a single parent just couldn't survive, absolutely not, and be a parent at the same time.
Yeah, the relationship with my gran, for starters, was, I don't know if she took on sort of a mother role, trying to be protective and not really, you know, let me kind of grow up. It was more of a, you're young, you don't know what you're doing, let me just guide you. But then my uncle, he was sort of, he's more of a, again, I'd say her friend, and you could just talk to again, just hang out, because he always used to take me to football matches and rugby matches. And
growing up as a teenage girl was, well, I don't think it was really any different. I mean, obviously at that age I didn't spend that much time with him, but we've always been like pretty close, as in like friends wise, so telling him things wasn't an issue, or, you know, like sharing, like, I don't know, sharing experiences with him wasn't an issue, because I think my dad felt guilty for the fact that he had been drinking a lot, so he was more, out of my two parents, he was the most understanding parent.
Communication between April and myself, now she's a teenager, it's spot on, it's great. I mean, we've got the usual blank spaces where she's off in a room or out with her mates, and I don't see as much of her, but when it comes to things like adult issues, as we say, drugs and sex, puberty, all of those kind of things, there's nothing at all that April and I can't talk about. She feels comfortable talking to me about things like that. I don't think that is because I'm a single father though. I think that's more to do with just how you are.
The images of fathers today has changed a lot since there was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Partly to do with the job structures. You know, years ago people was down the pits, they was working in steel industry. You know, they had jobs from 7 till 8 at night. Children didn't necessarily see the children, you know, their fathers, because of the kind of work that was being done. There's been a change in the job structures. You know, people have shorter time jobs now, 2 or 3 year contracts. A lot of mothers now work whereas they didn't before, so they're in part-time work, they're in full-time work, so fathers are having to take a lot more responsibilities. You know, you see fathers at schools now pushing prams, at events, you know, doing the school run and all these sort of things. They're now starting to see a few adverts on television where they're portraying fathers in a more positive image instead of just domestic violence or, you know, negative portrayals. Yeah, so there's definitely been a shift.
I think a father's expected to do more things now than he would have been a couple of years ago. Like, I think he's expected to, like, not only like support the child financially anymore, but also like be a friend as well as an adult.
I mean, years ago, I mean, society changes, doesn't it? With each generation, you've got different influences. And it used to be that, you know, the fathers went out to work and you had all the traditional male occupations. So you had the dockers, you had the steel workers, you had the miners, you had the factory workers. And the men were proud to be part of those communities and go out and do the work. And, you know, the females were at home raising the children. Then society changed, because the mines closed down, the steelworks closed down, the dockyards closed. So you had all these men with certain sort of attitudes, and they were used to being in a masculine community with nothing to do. A lot of unemployment and a lot of problems. And I think services never sort of recognised that. I mean, over the last 10, 15 years, things have changed dramatically.
Well, in my opinion, because you see stereotypical in films that the fathers always make the child usually do whatever they want. For example, they're trying to live their life through a child which they've not had. Whereas my dad has never done that. He's always supported me in anything I've wanted to do. Always been there. But however, with that, he's not really been able to show sort of like any form of love from a mother, because there was none of that bond really when you were younger. To your father is what it was like to your mum. So he really couldn't show the emotions because he's always been a hard man.
Well, I think the image really has changed radically in the past 5 years, let alone 10. We find ourselves now not being under the label of single fathers, and we're joining the ranks of single parent. You know, there's more acceptance.
Over the years, more guidance has become available to single fathers, in particular support groups and programmes where they can work with the dads to set up inspiring activities and projects for local children. It is now also possible for fathers to gain support so they are able to go into schools and get involved in their children's learning. Equality for single fathers has definitely developed within the last decade, with a number of communities and campaigns being established all over the country.
This is a poem from a son for a father. My dad gave me my name. My dad taught me to wrap up warm and survive in the rain. My dad taught me to not get burned, but to be brave when the time comes to walk through the flames. My dad taught me of games, of life in its crossroads and changing lanes. My dad taught me to take aim, but to shoot with the head, because a gun is no competition for the power of the brain. They talk a lot about dads not being there. Well, my dad was there, and his dad was there. Through the jeers, the beers, the cheers, the stares, the tears, and forever through the rest of my years. I received much love and affection from my father. He instilled in me the strength that is needed to get up and try harder. For most of my life, my dad has been my mentor, my protector, and my barber. He taught me that his house is our home, but that the world is larger. They teach us to look to the sky and talk to our Father, but I look in his eyes when I talk to my Father.